Hi, Yvonne and Christine. Are you kicking us off? Or do you want me to share? Can you hear me? Can anyone hear me? Oh, thanks, Yvonne. That's great. Hi.
I can hear you.
Oh, great. So we have to leave in 10 minutes. Shall we kick off? I believe that Jennate, are you able to unmute yet?
I can, Sarah.
Oh, brilliant. Okay, cool.
Do we have Yvonne to kick us off, or we kick ourselves off?
Can you hear me?
Oh,
hi, Christine. We can hear you.
Hi. Sorry, I think it took a while before I was, unmuted. So apologies for that. I know some of our IRC colleagues will be jumping off to another meeting, so we'll need to kick off as soon as possible. I don't know if Yvonne is here. Hi, Yvonne.
she's
So
sharing
Yvonne
her
will
screen.
be facilitating this session with Yvonne.
Hi, Yvonne, would you like please to facilitate this session? هل يمكنك أن تبدأ الآن السيد يفون؟
Sorry, Arabic interpretation, please. Can you be assigned? UNICEF, can you assign the interpreter?
Yes, we are ready now. This is Arabic.
Yeah, but then you need to be assigned because we are hearing you. But maybe first of all, can we know how many people requires interpretation in Arabic, Spanish, in Arabic and the other language? Please indicate in the chat if you require interpretation. For now, Mohammed, can you just maybe not talk until you have been signed? So this session is focused on understanding intersectionality and GBV, but mainly focused on meeting the needs of male survivors of sexual violence. And we are really pleased to have great presenters from IRC and HIAS. Here will be sharing with us their experiences, but also providing some technical guide. Based on our learning from the first panel sessions, we acknowledge that there may not be a lot of time. And I know we had factored in playing out a podcast on intersectionality. In the event that we are unable to listen to the podcast due to time limitation, we will post the link in the chat. So without wasting time, I would like to invite our first presenter, Sarah Cornish and her team, to proceed with the presentation. Thank you, and over to you, Sarah.
Thanks so much, Christine. Jennate's going to kick us off. Thank you.
Hi, thanks very much. Next, please. Thanks for joining this session. I'm here with the International Rescue Committee teams, led by our Senior Technical Advisor, Sarah Cornish-Spencer, with decades and decades of experience in GBV programming. Sarah also have a direct experience supporting LGBTQ and women and girls in the different settings, including the urban settings. We are pleased to have Sarah join us today. I'm also here with my colleague from the Somalia program, Joyce Masheti. She has led many years and worked to ensure families' approach to GBV programming centered on women and girls, and been working and deployed in different countries in East Africa, and also serve as the SAG members of the GBV subcluster So together, the three of us will be taking you through this afternoon session. A little bit of myself, practicing GBV since 2007. Many of you may be seen me in South Sudan, in Ethiopia, in Tanzania, but mainly for the past 4 years also, I'm based in the regional office with the IRC, working together with women rights organizations and women rights networks, supporting Japanese feminist GBV partnership in response to GBV emergency preparedness and response. Before we are going to take you through the rest of the presentation. Sorry, I'm not sure. Can you please go to the next slide? Thank you. Next slide, please, with all our beautiful smile. Before we are going to talk about this afternoon session, I'm posting in the chat right now the link to the Inclusions of Diverse Women and Girls Guidance Note, where myself and different partners in Asia, Middle East, and East and Southern Africa, some of those you may be heard about Agina Mamawa Africa, GBV Prevention Networks, or the International Women Peace Center in Uganda, including the Strategic Initiative for Women in the Horns of Africa, SIHA, with our partner in Asia, Gender Equality Networks, and Eoomkham in the Middle East, have developed these Inclusions of Diverse Women and Girl Guidance Note, where for your interest and time, you can check them out when you can. This is the guideline to help the inclusions of diverse women and girls in GBV programming, which very relevant to what we are going to discuss today. So talk about intersectionality. I think probably a new word to some and maybe familiar words to many. Intersectionality is a concept that emerged from a struggle of women of color in the US, and the term was first framed in 1989 by Kimberly Crenshaw. And then in the recent years, in our interagency minimum standards for GBV in emergency programming, you may also have familiar to these resources. The resources also include applying an intersectional approach to GBV programming as a widely agreed upon approach for the GBV intervention. So intersectionality is a framework for understanding that women and girls experience overlapping. So there are intersecting factors and forms of oppression, discrimination, and marginalizations based on multiple identity. So you may find these in the introduction session of the GBV Interagency Minimum Standards book that talk on how that you can apply intersectionalities into your own programming. And being an effective and accountable GBV programming, so you must pay attention to the diverse and intersecting forms of structural oppression, discrimination, and inequality that women and girls experience in a given context. So although all women and girls face discrimination in the context of a global patriarchy, it's important for us all to understand that not all women and girls experience oppressions and inequalities in the same way. So multiple inequalities may shape their risks and experiences of GBV differently. So in the resources, we are centering women and girls in the GBV prevention and response, but also have a very particular way on how each of the standard that may be also specifically applied to men and boys, which also will be later present on the session this afternoon. Because we are running out of time, I am also going to pass on to my colleagues for further discussions and what intersectionality really means in practice, and also for male survivor of sexual abuse. Sarah, over to you.
Great, thank you. Yes, we're so sorry that we have to rudely run away. Unfortunately, this session clashes with our global meeting for WPE, which was arranged ages ago, and we are going to have to leave in a couple of minutes. So apologies for that. I'm going to skip the Mentimeter for that reason. But just to say that when we're thinking about intersectionality, we have to start with ourselves. Yvonne, could you go to the next slide? So it's really important that we start in in a place of reflection and a place of compassion, right? Like we need to look at ourselves and other people when we're being inclusive with a sense of being on a journey. So naturally, as a person who's white, who has education, who comes from a middle-class background without disabilities, I myself experience an enormous amount of privilege. So starting with an understanding of that privilege is how we can participate appropriately in these spaces and in our work to support women and girl survivors of GBV. The next slide, please. Also, as a woman, as a queer woman, I also am at increased risk of experiencing violence and discrimination based on gender inequality and homophobia. So all of us here in the meeting today bring these different experiences that uniquely come together to create our experience of privilege and risk. Next slide, please, Yvonne. And this really is, as Jennate was saying, is at the heart of the GBV minimum standards approach and was highlighted in the coordination note that was shared earlier. It's so important that we center our practice, center our practice in being inclusive of diverse women and girls who are experiencing intersecting forms of oppression. So we're not a homogenous group as women and girls. We are all experiencing different levels of risk and oppression based on not only misogyny and sexism and patriarchal oppression of women and girls, but also some of us are, you know, we're experiencing because of our sexual orientation, our gender identity, because of having disabilities, older age, in our adolescence. Like there's such a rich tapestry of actors and of women and girls in the community that we're serving. So in the same way, we have to apply that lens to consideration of being inclusive of male survivors of sexual violence. So as we've discussed earlier, it's so important to understand that male survivors are experiencing sexual violence not because of their male privilege, which protects them, but because of other types of inequality. And people with disabilities, the LGBTIQ community, people coming from diverse ethnicities and religions are all experiencing oppression and disadvantage that puts them at risk of homophobic violence, transphobic violence, xenophobic violence, violence against people with disabilities. There's all of these different types of, sorry for the background noise, all of these intersecting axes of oppression. So when we're coming to ensure as a GBV actor that first we're being inclusive of diverse women and girls, and that we are also then able to work with our partners in child protection, in the LGBTQ community, in the disability actors, we need to be working across all of these social change movements to ensure specialized services are available, so that when someone with a disability experiences sexual violence, they have the specialized services they deserve. And as GBV actors, although we're used to saying we need more money, we also have to be championing appropriate funding for these other specialized streams of services and empowerment programs. And being able to build our voices across those movements is so important. So I'm going to hand over to Joy, if we can go to the next slide, who's going to speak about her direct experience in Somalia of making sure that without losing that focus on women and girls, we are inclusive of male survivors of sexual violence and how we can do that. Thank you, Joy.
Thank you, Sarah. So just moving on how to be inclusive of men and boys, we are springing over from a background of recognizing that gender-based violence is happening and women and girls are the most affected. But having said that, we also acknowledge that men and boys can also be victims of sexual and gender-based violence. So how do we include them, especially when it comes to access to service? We're saying that the best approach that we are going to take is we need to have a very multi-sectoral approach because what we are seeing is different men, depending on the different segments they represent in society, they may face sexual violence because of different intersectionalities. So we really need to have a close linkage and collaboration across sectors, especially looking at child protection, recognizing that a lot of male survivors, the majority of male survivors that we receive in our context are children, and acknowledging that as a WPE sector, we are not very well capacitated in terms of dealing with children. So making close linkages with child protection is very important. Once the cases are received by our caseworkers, the immediate preventive and the first aid counseling will be provided. But then a very clear referral system with the child protection is necessary to be put in place so that the child survivors can also get the comprehensive package that they require. We also do collaborate with the health sector within the organization and with other organizations, because we have realized a health sector is one of the key entry points for adult men in terms of seeking services for sexual violence. As much as many of them will not come presenting as sexual violence survivors, they'll come with other injuries, and then the sexual violence will be discovered later. So the collaboration between our WPE and the health sector is one. We have to make sure that the health providers are well equipped to handle matters of sexual violence. So in terms of capacity building and also making sure that we are training them on GBV guiding principles and minimal standards is important, so that survivors who are male are also receiving standard services that are in line with the guiding principles. We are also looking at other intersectionalities, like maybe people, men and children living with disabilities, older men, and also men in service. So we are linking with other specialized services like the disability groups, old age actors, and the main protection actors, even including those ones in Mind Action, so that we can see that from the different sectors, actually, we are really targeting well and ensuring that survivors are getting services when they require it. Next slide. Moving on to how to be inclusive of men and boys. Still, I'm just reiterating on what has already been said about adhering to the well-developed and tested minimum standards for clinical care and also for case management, because as we are offering services to men and boys, we also need that to ensure that we are keeping within the standards. And also what we are also looking at is also the gender-based violence case management guidelines, so that the men and boys actually, instead of them coming through the safe spaces or the reproductive health unit of the ANC unit of the hospital, where women receive their services from, we are seeing that they have to receive from the other services, other entry points where they are free and they feel safe. And another thing that we really have been practicing in our health facilities in IRC Somalia is, as much as it is very widely recommended that females are the ones who are tending to sexual violence survivors, in Somalia, according to our context, actually, men cannot disclose to women when it comes to sexual violence. So when we are doing the training of clinical workers and healthcare workers, we ensure that we also train men in terms of delivering GBV services and sexual violence services, so that when a patient comes in and they insist that they want to see a male practitioner, there are no many questions that arise, but we respect from the survivor-centeredness, and we direct them to the next male practitioner who will ensure that they are safe and they are comfortable discussing their sexual experience. Another, while dealing with the health also, and just making sure that men are all, and boys are also included, we have faced various challenges, and a lot of them actually are arising from the attitudes of health workers and the norms and practices, having been socialized in a context where it is believed that men cannot experience sexual and gender-based violence. So what we are doing as a way of stopping the gap from the WP sector is trying to train the health survivors and trying to work on their attitudes first, so that we increase the sensitization and knowledge of the availability of male survivors, so that they can approach it in a non-judgmental and non-victimization way, and give male survivors the kind of treatment they need and not stigmatize further. Next slide.
Next slide, you should be now concluding, eh?
Yeah, this is our final slide. So just to sum it all up, when we are looking at intersectionality, we can sum it up in 3 steps where we are looking at specialization. We understand that different men are victims because of the different sectors they are working with, be it from protection or be it from child survival. So it is very important to recognize the different specializations that are needed when it comes to dealing with service delivery for male survivors. Having said that, we need to have very close coordination across the sectors and cross-sectoral referral pathways, so that we can direct our survivors to the right services. And finally, there is a cross-movement building across the different specializations, across the different sectors, and across different actors, so that male can also receive services. But what we have to underscore here is that as much as we are looking at including male survivors, we have to underscore that women are the majority survivors of GBV, and we have to have very focused and approaches that are going to ensure that we have enough resources that are going to address sexual violence and gender-based violence issues for women. Thank you.
We are sorry that we won't be able to join the Q&A later, but I hope you all will enjoy your rest of the session. I put the email for the 3 of us in the chat, so please feel free, and your questions are welcome to contact us anytime. Thank you from DIRC. Thank you.
Thank you, Jennate, Sarah, and Joy. I'm wondering if you have a minute, maybe we could just take one question or 2, if there's any from the audience. Hi, would that be okay? Is that okay?
Karibu,
Okay.
Karibu, please.
Okay, please. I saw a hand up. Please go ahead and raise your question. There's a question from Adele. How do you promote services for male survivors so that they know about them and know that they're improved in terms of provider attitudes? I don't know whether you'd like to answer that question.
But is the question, okay.
How do you promote services for male survivors so that they know about them and know that they are improved in terms of providers' attitudes? I think, how do you go about creating awareness on available services for male survivors and addressing also attitudes of service providers?
Joy, any specific example from Somalia, your strategy on promoting male survivor?
Okay, thank you very much, Jennate. As I had stated earlier, our program is so focused on women, but we also recognize that there are also male survivors. So in our messaging, actually, there are messages that also say that men can also be survivors of gender-based violence. And there is a list of where they can seek services when they fall victim or when they know someone else who is a victim of sexual violence. We also have a team of community volunteers against GBV, both male and women, and they are also a key entry point. Also, in our protection mainstreaming across sectors, these are some of the messages that other sectors like ERD, food security also pass around in terms of the referral pathway for sexual violence, including for men. When it comes to attitudes, this one we work very directly, targeting service providers, and we take them through training, and they are also monitored at regular intervals where surveys are done on attitudes and practices so that we can know whether they are ready to provide services or not. Back to you.
Thank you so much, Joy, for that comprehensive response. Can you quickly, explain what you mean by cross-movement building among the three core areas you highlighted at the end of your session? Cross-movement building. What does it entail?
Okay. Thank you. I thought Jennate is still on the line, but
yeah, yes, I'm here. I was waiting to hear maybe a specific example from Somalia. I can definitely go after you too.
Okay, so in Somalia, actually, what we have done is instead of just focusing on women rights organization only and also GBV actors, we are looking across and seeing, looking at the different intersectionalities when we are looking at GBV. So we are looking into how do we reach out to other sectors, including the people who are advocating for the rights of the elderly, organizations that are working with people with disability. And we are coming together and just recognizing that even within those different sectors, their members actually, or their beneficiaries are also potential victims of GBV and sexual violence. So how do we create interlinkages so that we can speak with one voice across the different streams, so that GBV is being given a total and cross-sectoral approach to ensure that there is reduced stigma and discrimination, and also people can have easier access to services. Over to you, Jennate.
Yeah, just to add on what Joy just sharing. So at the regional level, the IIC also working with different frontline GBV service provider, including women rights organizations and women-led organizations or networks, and in different regions and across the globe. So we have capacity sharing programming that we work together on how to address GBV response and prevention, including the intersectionalities and receiving male survivor, males and boy survivor as well. So from the previous experience, people actually able to discuss and share their common challenges, and also we success to develop together a guideline that I mentioned in the chat earlier, and many from the learning forum across different actors in the region, they actually able to apply and take back what the forums offer and able to address their access barrier in terms of the physical access, or how they share the information, and working with the attitude with their staff, or how that they actually work to improve their institutional policies, and how to address better in terms of GBV care and respond for women and girls, and also to promote for the access for the male survivor as well. I'm not sure with both specific Somalia example and some of the movement and global and regional work between actors would address Adele's question.
Thank you so much, Jennate, and we're also happy to have IRC as one of the members of the intersectionality pillar of the regional GBV working group. I think towards the end, maybe Vaughn will say something about the pillar as she's the current chair. So thank you so much, IRC, and we wish you all the best in your next meeting. So
thank you so much, everyone. I just want to say hi and enjoy the rest of your session.
Thank you, Jennate. Thank you,
Bye.
Jennate. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, Joy. That was IRC sharing their experiences in ensuring access to services, access of GBV services by individual survivors with diverse vulnerabilities and needs. So allow me to invite our next speaker, Louis Sidigu, will be presenting on the intersecting experience of LGBTIQ and refugees in Nairobi. He's from, he works with HIAS as a protection officer. Thank you and welcome, Louis. Over to you.
Afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Are you able to see my screen?
Yes. But maybe you need to make it, yeah, it's clear now.
Yes. Thank you very much. As introduced, my name is Louis. I work as the protection officer under the Gender and GBV department. And I would like to appreciate the opportunity. Just to clarify, moderator, please, do I have 15 minutes or 20?
I have 20 minutes, please.
Thank you very much. Yes, first I'd like to appreciate the regional GBV working group for the convening and giving us the opportunity to share. I also appreciate what our colleagues in different contexts have shared, the wealth of experience. That is wonderful. We also acknowledge, shifting gender roles and existing gender equality, and we look forward to working together. So I'll talk about HIAS, also noting that prior to my presentation, there's a lot of information that has been shared, and I found myself sorting through the slides to ensure that I'm able to bring something that will not only add value, but will be different rather than repeat. So basically, I'll talk about HIAS. HIAS was founded in 1881 as the Hebrew Immigrant Aid Society. It is a Jewish American nonprofit organization and provides humanitarian aid and assistance to refugees. Our vision is that we stand for a world in which refugees find welcome, safety, and opportunity. Our mission is provide vital services to refugees and asylum seekers around the world and advocate for their fundamental rights so they can rebuild their lives. So HIAS Africa operations began in 2002. HIAS Kenya has 4 main programs: legal protection, mental health and psychosocial support, economic inclusion, and gender and GBV. Under legal protection, we ensure forcibly displaced persons access territory, legal status, and their basic legal rights. Under mental health and psychosocial support, we seek to increase access to psychosocial services through community-based approaches, culturally appropriate interventions, and created safe spaces. Under economic inclusion, we seek to enhance livelihood skills, and we support business enterprise development and leverage the local partnerships to advocate for an enabling environment for refugees to conduct business. In the last program, that is Gender and GBV, we support forcibly displaced women, girls, and LGBTIQ individuals access human and legal rights free from violence and oppression. Under the Gender and GBV program, we have a three-pillar approach where we concentrate on risk reduction, we concentrate on response, and prevention in relation to gender-based violence. Under risk reduction, we help to build women and girls' economic assets. We map safe zones in displacement areas, provide critical information and awareness, and support safe spaces for women and girls. Under GBV response, we help women take back the control and power that violence seeks to erode through life-saving case management support, psychosocial services, and referrals to health, legal protection, and safe spaces for women and girls. Under the prevention pillar, we create spaces for men and boys to unlearn norms and behaviors that contribute to and condone violence. Our prevention program helps to enable change that is not only life-saving, but also transformative and sustainable. Differently represented under risk reduction, seeing that we are able to meet basic needs.
Louis, sorry to interrupt you, but I'm wondering if you would like to get to the focus of your presentation for today, because I'm worried that 20 minutes might not be enough.
Yes, it's okay, Christine. Thank you. In reference to what we are sharing about today, engaging men and boys in GBV prevention and response in humanitarian settings, we reiterate that men and boys largely play key roles in the refugee community, that is either as community leaders, faith leaders, etc. It is therefore key that we engage them in transformative conversations towards prevention, risk reduction, and response. HIAS has adopted an IRC's EMAP, engaging men in accountable practice.
Sorry, Luis, again. The prevention sections were in the morning, and now the parallel session is focused on response. So it would be really great if you could focus on the response component. Thank you.
Good. Christine, I think you should be guided by whoever was planning the session on what to present. I'll just continue. I'll come to what is relevant shortly. HIAS acknowledges that among the refugees, there are populations with lived experiences that increase their vulnerability to gender-based violence and economic inclusion. That is the age, according to the gender markers, age, identity, faith, and ability. So they not only face vulnerability as refugees, but also as LGBTIQ persons. They face hostility from the host community and also the refugee community. The protection concerns include GBV, harassment from at their workplaces, fair remuneration at work, as compared to fellow workers in the host community, forced transactional sex work, and risk of contracting HIV and other STIs. HIAS conducts GBV case management for GBV survivors, including LGBTIQ persons. This entails comprehensive case management, including assessing the level of vulnerability, risk, counseling, referral to health and legal protection, safe space resettlement or livelihood intervention, and linkage to community-based support systems through the protection monitors, peer educators, and CBO leaders. So HIAS works to enhance community protection mechanisms as well as linkages between refugee communities, local institutions. This includes LGBTIQ protection monitors, LGBTIQ peer educators, and the CBOs. And the CBOs are LGBTIQ refugee organizations, where we have the refugees grouped and organized into communities that speak to their intersecting experiences. We have supported the CBOs with Uber to facilitate access to SRHR services within the spaces that they exist. So we also have support groups, and we also have an LGBTIQ working group. We offer direct assistance and consumption support to LGBTIQ persons, and also we offer gender diversity and sensitivity training, not only to our partners, but also to service providers and also the LGBTIQ persons themselves. We also do capacity building on safety and security, both at the community level and at the institutional level. If time allows, I'd like to share a success story. It will take only 4 minutes, please.
Please go ahead. Go ahead. There's no voice, Luis.
I'm working on that.
Okay.
I used to watch all the incident on TV. I used to watch all the incident on TV. LGBT people being beaten, being harassed on the street. I never thought it would happen to me. I was 16 years and I was in a secret love, like a secret relationship with a man. I met with him at my sister's shop, and he's like a very known person, like he has a good reputation back in Rwanda. At the beginning, I didn't know he was married. One day, the wife found out what was happening. Like, she was so mad, and she decided, like, to tell everyone in neighborhood, family members, marafiki, cause mi vile nilijua hiyo kitu imejulikana, hiyo mama ameambia kila mtu, nilijua hii ni mwisho wangu. I tried to talk to him, and he changed completely. He was like, if I even see you again, I can kill myself. I was like, there's no way I can allow this to happen to me, because where will I go? Where will I hide? You know? I decided just to run. It was a long journey. It was terrifying. I ended up here in Nairobi, Kenya.
Homosexuality is illegal in over 60 countries around the world. And in some, it is actually punishable by death. HIAS Kenya began working with LGBT refugees after the anti-homosexuality bill was passed in Uganda. We saw really, really big numbers of LGBT refugees fleeing into Kenya from all over the East African countries. And they come with stories of persecution that they faced. They have been sexually abused, they are imprisoned, they have been beaten, they have been stoned. To help them start afresh, rebuild, and embrace the future with all that it holds. That is all that matters.
After I completed all the registration as an asylum seeker, I came to know HIAS. They have been helping me since. They gave me someone to stay with. They offered me counseling, and they gave me the scholarship. I went to school, and now HIAS is helping me in the settlement process. Still, I'm not safe, you know. So I'm waiting to migrate to Canada because I knew HIAS. My life changed completely. They made me realize that because you are different, you are still a human being. They come to help you when you need help, and at least you will feel safe and you will feel like you have someone who can love you the way you are. And that's what HIAS did. Yeah, I feel loved actually.
Thank you so much, Luis, for that great presentation. I can see that there are already some questions for you on the chat. So I don't know, Luis, if you would like to go ahead and answer those questions. I can also see some hands up. So maybe you can start with the first question, and then we take on other questions. So the first question is from Yulia, and she would like to know which topics are covered in the training on safety and security, and whether you can share any resources related to the topic, but also how can one join such training? Over to you, Luis.
Thank you very much, Christine. Thank you for the question, Yulia. On the safety and security training, we partner with an umbrella body called GALC, Gay and Lesbian Association of Kenya. And with them, they provide us with facilitators to be able to lead us in this process. They basically take the participants through the concept of safety, security, risks, threats, and how to better ensure that they are safe and being able to conduct at their own personal levels risk analysis and mitigation. And from then on, we are also able to have candid conversations towards mapping the areas or zones that are high-risk areas, and this is done collectively. Thank you. With regards to the resources, if you can reach out personally, I'll be able to link you up to one of the facilitators of the training. Thank you.
Thank you, Luis. Are there any other questions from the audience to Luis? Someone's hand was up. Also, if you want to just raise your hands and speak, kindly raise your hands and we'll get you. Yes, Elise Uloze, kindly go ahead and ask your question. Yvonne, do you know how we can...
Merci beaucoup pour la parole. Merci pour les présentateurs. Je voudrais savoir quel type de violence que les partenaires intimes LGBT évoquent lorsqu'ils viennent demander les services. C'est-à-dire, entre eux, est-ce qu'il y a des violences qu'ils évoquent dans les relations d'intimité. Donc, ce ne sont pas des violences externes, mais des violences internes entre les deux partenaires LGBT. Merci.
I did not get the question.
Can you interpret that for Luis, please? Or our interpreter, can you?
Okay, just to Christine, there is a question that was asked earlier, by Adele, how do you promote services to male survivors so that you know about them and know that they're improved in terms of provider attitudes? I'd like to give an insight that regards to our experience as HIAS, that we have been able to get a partner to come on board to support us to get transport through the CBOs. As I said earlier, we've organized and grouped our beneficiaries or clients into CBOs, reflecting on their intersecting experiences. And it is through those CBOs, the leaders are able to transport or facilitate transport to a health facility and ensuring that such triggers such as stigma and discrimination do not happen. We are also able to get feedback as to whether or not they've been able to get assistance. I'm waiting also on the translation of the question. I was not able to get the answer.
Okay. Elise, can you ask your question? Okay, I think the French translator is, how do you deal with that? Elise, can you ask your question again so that Yvonne can translate to the presenter? Thanks.
Thanks. Je posais la question, quel type de violence évoquée entre partenaires intimes LGBT? Et donc, les violences qui se font, qui se passent à l'interne dans les relations des personnes intimes dans leur couple, quoi. Donc, ce ne sont pas des violences qui sont externes, ce ne sont pas des violences qui viennent en dehors de leurs relations, mais plutôt, j'aimerais savoir, est-ce qu'il y a des violences évoquées par les partenaires intimes dans les couples LGBT? Merci beaucoup.
Merci beaucoup, Elise. Yvonne will take us through the translation. Yvonne, over to you.
Christine, honestly, it was a bit too quick for me and had other issues to solve. I just understood kind of you want to know which type of violence is happening in relationships between two homosexual or in the LGBTQI. Which type of violence is that, and how do you react to that? That's what I got from the translation.
Yeah, I think I got. I think it's around what are the common types of violence that LGBTQI, tend to report or seek services for.
In their own relationships, in their partnerships to each other.
In their partnerships.
Basically, the dynamics are the same with regards to violence, especially IPV. There is physical violence, there's slapping, hitting, kicking, beating. There is sexual violence, forms of sexual coercion, rape. There is emotional abuse, such as insults, demeaning, constant humiliation, intimidation, threats of harm, and even extortion and blackmail. Then there is also the other controlling behaviors, especially in instances where there is a difference in class or status or legal identity, such as isolating from family, monitoring movements, restricting access to financial resources. And I'll just recall what Hannah shared earlier in the guidance note, is that what really becomes challenging is that despite having this intimate partner violence being evident, is that there is limited disclosure of. Translator, please. Yes, there is limited disclosure and reporting, either due to cultural influence, toxic masculinity, their socialization, the legal environment, or other religious factors.
Thank you so much, Louise. I think we are almost to the end of our session, and would be using the main link to get back to the main room. I'll try to share it here. But if there is any last final question for Louise, kindly go ahead and ask as I try to get the link.
I have shared my email address on the chat box. I would like to thank all for the opportunity.
Thank you so much, Luis, for your presentation and for sharing with us your experiences. We appreciate. To everyone, kindly use the link Yvonne has shared to get back to the main room. Thank you for your participation. We'll be sharing a lot more other resources at the end of the event.
Yes, from interpreter, I can see there's a question. Francis? Yes, we do.